Alright everyone, welcome to my first candid drive in the Ford Fiesta ST. This is my first time driving these roads in a manual transmission car. Little bit of a different experience. I'm kind of in a different mentality here though, because normally I'm used to passing everyone, and right now in this car I'm like constantly checking my rear view, seeing if there's anyone who's catching me, because I'm definitely not driving anywhere near as fast as I would in the other cars. Well within the speed limit, of course. It's been fun so far. Since I got out in the open here in Angeles Forest, we've been doing pretty well. You know, it's not been as difficult to pick up driving manual as I thought it would. I know for everyone who lives in Europe, you're like, that's all we do from the get-go. I realize that's a thing for you, but here in the States, it's a little bit different. Most people start off driving auto. That might be all they ever drive. It was really all I had ever driven until getting this car, other than the couple times that I had driven a friend's manual when I made those videos of it.
With your personal vehicle? My personal vehicle.
But here we are, finally owning one. I still can't heel toe in this thing due to the pedal spacing. I'm sure that there are some folks who are watching this who own one of these and are like, oh, I can heel toe just fine stock. Well, I'm glad you've gotten used to it. It's a combination of my lack of being used to it, lack of experience, lack of skill, and also the pedal spacing in this car is certainly a little bit weird. But that said, it means I'm braking just a little bit earlier than I might otherwise, and that way it gives me some time to get off the brake, onto the throttle, do a rev match. I can't do it as quickly as I would being able to just drop a couple gears at once if I were able to heel toe, so I could keep braking and do it while I'm braking. There are also a lot of corners where I'd like to be able to kind of trail off the brake, and that obviously means that I can't get off over to the gas to do a rev match. So my driving, definitely not perfect by any means, but hopefully it'll not look it on the video. So far, what I think I've actually been most impressed with on this car is the braking, which I didn't expect, because when you look at the brakes, when you look at the rotors from the outside of the car, they're tiny. They're itty-bitty little things. So I didn't think this car was going to have the stopping power that it seems to have. And so for that, pretty cool. The car into corners, a little bit wobbly. The traction light likes to come on a lot, and not even when I'm on the gas. It's not like it's regulating the throttle input. It's just that when it's going around corners, it starts to shimmy a little bit, and it's like, hey, did you know that your car isn't completely planted? You might be slightly losing traction here and there. And I'm like, yeah, I can feel that. It feels a lot different than it normally would when driving one of the other cars. But you know what? That's kind of to be expected. The main purpose of this car was kind of to act as training wheels, in a sense, so that I at least get the mechanics of driving a manual transmission vehicle, and then from there I can jump into another car. See right there, I went slightly wide, not exactly used to the grip on this thing, which there's much less, much narrower tires than I have on all the other cars, understandably. Again, the dream being a Carrera GT, but that's still a ways down the road. It sounds surprisingly good though. I mean, it has the aftermarket exhaust on it, but it really helps with the shifting to have a car that you can hear when to shift, as opposed to having to look at the tach. Listen to that sound, listen to this thing go. So for those of you in the last video were trying to give me tips and tricks on going between 1 and 2, I understand everything that everyone was trying to tell me, and I've experimented with all those things. Basically just the 1 to 2 shift in this car isn't a super fun thing. Try to get out of it as quickly as possible, and you're not going to be doing any downshifting into 1 when you're driving roads like this. So it really is only due to the stop and go nature of LA traffic that it ends up being something that you have to kind of deal with. Oh dude, we got snow right on the sides of the road here. This is wild. It's like 50 degrees out right now, so it's not exactly snowy conditions, but I guess it's just enough shade here to where it hasn't melted. There's quite a bit though. It's cool. You know, in this car in particular, it's kind of refreshing not to be worrying as much about, are there some bits of gravel and rock in the road? Do I have to worry about going over that stuff? I'm not as concerned. Like in the pista, you know, I was constantly commenting here. I'm like, oh God, look at all these bits of rock and gravel and stuff. And it hurts going over them. Here I'm like, oh, we're all good. It's cleared up a little bit in terms of the road debris since I recorded that video. But regardless, it's not something I was terribly concerned about. So it is kind of fun to have a car like this, not gonna lie. Additionally, I drive all those other cars in the manual mode regardless, so it's definitely given me just a bit more of like a prerequisite in terms of, I always am shifting. It's just a different mechanic of shifting in those cars as opposed to a manual transmission car. I just have to add a little bit of extra footwork in order to make the shift happen. And I will say, very satisfying when you hit a rev match well. So right here into the slight corner, feels good. Feels good to do that. It'd be nicer if I was actually heel towing it so I could do the whole thing properly, but we'll get to that at some point once I've been able to add in the pedal spacer and all that to this thing. In terms of bang for your buck, for the price that I paid for this thing, it's a genuinely impressive, fun car at 1/10 of the price of like all the other cars. Being able to have fun out in the canyons is really not bad at all. Now entered what's known as Mexico, a bit of a drag strip, except now we're gonna flip around, go back down, and talk some more. Get going a little bit here. That's the 1 to 2. Get that out of the way, and then it's definitely not as fast as the other cars, and my shifting is not the best either, but it's got a little bit of pickup to it. I definitely lose a lot of speed on the shifts, and I can get faster with them. I'm just being a little bit more conservative, just because I'm trying to keep it smooth. I haven't done a money shift, which would be very embarrassing to do. A money shift, in case you're not familiar with the term, is say you accidentally like forget what gear you're in, or you push it in a little bit of the wrong direction. You're trying to go from like, I don't know, 6 to 5 and you go 6 to 3 instead. That would be a money shift, and it mechanically over revs the car beyond its rev limiter, and it's a money shift because it costs money. See, another thing about this car though, it's very unassuming. You know, it's a Ford Fiesta, so you end up behind people, and I don't think there's going to be as much of a presence of mind to like, maybe I should pull over for this Ford Fiesta because I'm going slowly. I think it's just like, oh, it's a Ford Fiesta behind me. They couldn't be going very fast. On the other hand, like I said earlier, I'm looking out every now and again, seeing, is there anyone who's catching up to me so I can pull over? Not what I'm used to doing out here, but I try to be courteous. There is one other thing in this car that I've noticed it before, and I wanted to see how it would be in a canyon drive, and that is this center tunnel right here. And I find myself bracing, obviously, when I'm going around corners quickly, and I like to do it with my legs. And the way that the car is set up, my knee goes into this center tunnel here, and it kind of hurts. It's just a piece of plastic, basically, and I need to actually probably buy a pad. So, you know, the 600 LT had to buy a butt pad. This car, I think I'm going to have to go and buy a pad for the side here so that I can not jam my knee into it. I think we are really getting a look at what it's like to trail someone in a car that doesn't look flashy, because I don't think they think much about it. Driving this car, you do see a different experience on the road, and that was something I was actually curious about going into the thing. I was like, I wonder if like cars around you act differently when you're in just, you know, your regular old run-of-the-mill looking car as opposed to some flashy looking sports car. There is definitely a difference. I actually think I noticed the average car being like more aggressive and trying to get around more so than they would in one of my other cars, with exceptions being if someone is like trying to keep up with you or like encourage a race or something, then they'll drive more aggressive with one of the other cars. And with the Ford GT especially, that's kind of a unique case where you get people even in like a Prius or something who drive aggressively to try to catch up and like look at it and take photos and stuff. Otherwise, just in terms of everyday driving, it's like you're seen as much more of an obstacle to get around to people, it seems like in this, and therefore they're less concerned with your existence and trying to be courteous to it and that sort of thing, is what I've noticed. I find it interesting. I like to try to understand people's psychology. That's actually a big part of making YouTube videos, is trying to understand what people are going to be interested in. But anyway, that's what I've noticed with this car. I've been on a very long stretch of just no ability to pass. It's a freaking minivan, dude. Are they going to go right lane is the question. Watch them. Oh, they are. Okay. Very nice. All right. Back to speed. Another thing when it comes to the downshifting, I have to stomp on the throttle. I'm putting it all the way to the floor every time that I do a downshift, and then what varies is simply how long I hold it to the floor. And what I was being told in the comments on my last video was that this car has like a dual mass flywheel, so it's kind of heavy and it takes a lot of energy to get it spinning. Again, 911, not a great comparison to a car like this, but when I was driving a 911 manual, it was just like the slightest little blip of the gas and boom, the revs were way up, exactly where you needed to be or beyond it. I think this thing was like 25 seconds off the pace of like a GT2 RS around Laguna Seca. So I'm like, okay, you know what? It's not only me. It is slower. Still fun though. GT2 RS is 20 times the cost of this thing. So yeah, it's not bad. It's not bad. This thing isn't 20 times slower around a lap. It's exponential how much you end up paying for those additional tenths of a second in a car. But what I will say is that those additional tenths of a second in a car, they also do feel a lot cooler. You being able to go 1 second faster around a track might actually feel 2 times as exciting. Somehow. I don't know how exactly that works. Anyway, I think I've said most of what there is to say about this thing. Honestly, I kind of want to just enjoy the rest of the drive down, silently trying to focus on driving the thing properly. So thank you guys very much for tuning into the video. Hopefully I didn't disappoint you too much with my driving here, but hey, at least I didn't money shift. Could be worse. Anyway, like if you liked, check out the playlist in the description if you want to catch more car stuff in general. Subscribe to the channel if you want to stay tuned for other car stuff. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I guess I'll see you in future videos, and I am going to just enjoy this rest of the drive down and focus on the experience. Have a good one.